Oh yeah, Kaiden's work special. Because he's just about to head off to work. Let us see. Exodus 21. Whoever steals an ox or sheep and slaughters it or sells it. Oh, no. 21. Hebrew servants. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for 6 years, but in the 7th year he shall go free without paying anything. If he comes alone, he is to go free alone. But if he has a wife, when he comes, she is to go with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the women and children shall belong to her masters, and only the man shall go free. But if the servant declares, I love my master and my wife and my children, and do not want to go free, then his master must take him before the judges. He shall take him to the door or the doorpost, and pierce his ear with an awl. Then he will be his servant for life. If a man sells his daughter as a servant, she does not go free as male servants do. If she does not please the master who selected her for himself, he must let her be redeemed. He has no right to sell her to foreigners, because he has broken faith with her. If he selects her for his son, he must grant her the rights of a daughter. If he marries another woman, he must not deprive the first one of her food, clothing, or material rights. If he does not provide her with these 3 things, she is to go free, without any payment or money. Anyone who strikes a person with a fatal blow is to be put to death. However, if it is not done intentionally, but God lets it happen, there are to flee to a place I will designate. But if anyone schemes and kills someone deliberately, that person is to be taken from my altar and put to death. Anyone who attacks their father or mothers is to be put to death. Damn. Anyone who kidnaps anyone is to be put to death, whether the victim has been sold or its kidnappers still in the kidnapper's possession. Anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death. If a person quarrels and one person hits another with a stone or with their fist, and the victim does not die but is confined to bed, the one who struck the blow will not be held liable if the other person cannot get up and walk around outside with a staff. However, the guilty party must pay the injured person for any loss of time and see that the victim is completely healed. Anyone who beats their male or female slave with a rod must be punished. If the slave dies as a direct result, but they are not to be punished if the slave recovers after a day or 2, since the slave is their property. If people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman, but she gives birth prematurely, but there is no serious damage or injury, the offender must be fined, whatever the woman's husband demands and the court allows. But if there is serious damage, you are to take life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. An owner who hits a male or female slave in the eye and destroys it, he must let the slave go free in compensation for the eye. And the owner who knocks out a tooth of a male or female slave must let the slave go free to compensate for the tooth. If a bull gores a man or woman to death, the stone is to be stoned to death, and its meat must not be eaten. But the owner of the bull will not be held responsible. If, however, the bull has had a habit of ignoring and of goring, and the owner has been warned, but has not kept it penned up and kills a man or woman, the bull is to be stoned, and its owner is also to be put to death. However, if payment is demanded, the owner may redeem his life by payment of whatever is demanded. This law also applies if the bull gores a son or daughter. If the bull gores a male or female slave, the owner must pay 30 shekels of silver to the master of the slave, and the bull is to be stoned to death. If anyone covers a pit or digs one and fails to cover it, if an ox or donkey falls into it, the person who has opened the pit must pay the owner for the loss and take the dead animal in exchange. If anyone's bull enters someone else's bull and it dies, the 2 parties are to sell the live one and divide both money and the dead animal equally. However, it is not known that the bull had a habit of goring, yet the owner did not keep it penned up. The owner must pay animal for animal and take the dead animal in exchange. Whoever steals an ox or sheep and slaughters it or sells it must pay back 5 head of cattle for the ox and 5 sheep for the sheep. If a thief is caught breaking in the night and it is struck a fatal blow, the defender is not guilty of bloodshed. But if it happens after sunrise, the defender is guilty of bloodshed. Anyone who steals must certainly make restitution, but if they have nothing, they must be sold to pay for their theft. If the stolen animal is found alive in their possession, whether ox or donkey or sheep, they must pay back double. If anyone grazes their livestock in a field or vineyard and lets them stray and graze in someone else's field, the offender must make restitutions for the best of their own field or vineyard. If a fire breaks out and spreads into the thorn bushes so that it burns and shocks the grain or standing grain or the whole field, the one who started the fire must make restitution. If anyone gives a neighbor silver goods for safekeeping, and they are stolen from a neighbor's house, the thief is caught and must pay back double. But if the thief is not found, the owner of the house must appear before the judges, and they must determine whether the owner of the house has laid nets on the other person's property. In all cases, the illegal possessions of an ox, a donkey, a sheep, a garment, or any other lot property about which somebody says, "This is mine," both parties are to bring their cases before the judges, and the one whom the judge declares guilty must pay back double to the other. If anyone gives a donkey, an axe, or a sheep, or any other animal to its neighbors for safekeeping, and it dies, or is injured, or is taken away while no one is looking, the issues between them will be settled by the taking an oath before the Lord that the neighbor did not lay hands on the other person's property. The owner is to accept this, and no restitution is required. But if the animal was stolen from the neighbor, restitution must be made to the owner. If it was torn into pieces by a wild animal, the neighbor shall bring the remains of evidence and shall not require to pay for the torn animal. If anyone who borrows an animal from their neighbor and is injured or dies while the owner is not present, they must make retribution. But if the owner is with the animal, the borrower will not have to pay if the animal was hired. If the animal was hired, the money paid for the hire covers the loss. If a man seduces a virgin who is not pledged to be married and sleeps with her, he must pay the bride price, and she shall be his wife. If her father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he must still pay the bride price for virgins. Do not allow sorceresses to live. Anyone who has sexual relations with an animal is to be put to death. Whoever sacrifices to any god other than the Lord himself must be destroyed. Do not mistreat or oppress foreigners, for you were foreigners in Egypt. Do not take advantage of the widow or the fatherless. If you do, they cry out to me. I will certainly hear the cry. My anger will be aroused, and I will kill you with the sword. Your wives will become widows, and your children fatherless. If you lend money to one of my people among you who is needy, do not treat it like a business deal. Charge no interest. If you take your neighbor's cloak as a pledge, return it by sunset, because the cloak is the only thing covering your neighbor has. What else can they sleep in? Because the cloak, when they cry out to me, I will hear, for I am compassionate. Do not blaspheme God or curse the ruler of your people. Do not hold back offerings from your garneries or your vats. You must give me the firstborn of your sons. Do the same with your cattle and your sheep. Let them stay with their mothers for 7 days, but give them to me on the 8th day. You are to be my holy place, my holy people. Do not eat the meat of wild animal torn by wild beasts. Throw it to the dogs. Do not spread false reports. Do not help a guilty person by being malicious witness. Do not follow the crowd in doing wrong. When you give a testimony in a lawsuit, do not pervert justice by siding with the crowd, and do not show favoritism to a poor person in a lawsuit. If you come across your enemy's ox or donkey wandering off, be sure to return it. If you see the donkey of someone who hates you fallen down under its load, do not leave it there. Be sure to help them with it. Do not deny justice to your poor people in their lawsuits. Have nothing to do with a false charge, and do not put an innocent person or honest person to death, for I will not acquit the guilty. Do not accept a bribe, for a bribe blinds those and sees and twists the word of the innocents. Do not oppress a foreigner, You yourselves know how it feels to be foreigners, because you were foreigners in Egypt. For 6 years you were to sow fields and harvest crops, but during the 7th year let the land lay unplowed and unused. Then the poor among you people may get food from it, and the wild animals may eat what is left. Do the same with your vineyard and your olive grove. 6 days for your work. On the 7th day do not work, so that your ox and your donkey may rest. And so the slave born in your household and the foreigner living among you may be refreshed. Be careful to do everything I have said to you. Do not invoke the names of other gods. Do not let them be heard on your lips. 3 times a year you are to celebrate a festival to me. Celebrate the festival of the unleavened bread. For 7 days eat bread made without yeast, as I commanded you. Do this at the appointed time of the month, Aviv. For that month you came out of Egypt. No one is to appear before me empty-handed. Celebrate the festival of the harvest with the fruitful of your crops and sow in your fields. Celebrate the festival of integrating at the end of the year, when you gather your crops from the field. 3 times a year all the men are to appear before the sovereign Lord. Do not offer the blood of a sacrifice to me, along with anything containing yeast. The fat of my festival offerings must not be kept until morning. Bring the best of your first fruits to your soil, to the house of the Lord your God. Do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. See, I am sending an angel ahead of you, guarding you along the way that you bring. I have prepared, and to bring you to the place I prepared. Pay attention to him and listen to what he says. Do not rebel against him. He will not forgive your rebellion, since my name is in him. If you listen carefully to what he says and do all that I say, I will be an enemy to your enemies, and I will oppose those who oppose you. My angel will go ahead and bring you into the lands of Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hittites, Jebusites, and I will wipe them out. Do not bow before other gods, or worship them or follow their practices. You must abolish them and break their sacred stones to pieces. Worship the Lord your God, and his blessing will be your food and water. I will take away sickness from among you, and none will miscarry or be barren in your land. I will give you a full lifespan. I will send my terror ahead of you and throw into confusion every nation and encounter. I will make your enemies turn their backs and run. I will send the hornet ahead of you and drive out the Hittites, Canaanites, and Hittites out of your way. But I will not drive them out in a single year, because the land will become desolate, the wild animals too numerous for you. Little by little I will drive them out before you, until you increase enough to take possession of the land. I will establish borders from the Red Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, the desert, and the Euphrates River. I will give into the hands of the people who live in the land, and you will drive them out before you. Do not make a covenant with them or their gods. Do not let them live in your land, or they will cause you to sin against me, because the worship of their gods will certainly be a snare to you. 4:24. Then the Lord said to Moses, Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Ahab and Abihu, the 70 of the elders of Israel. You are to worship at a distance, but Moses alone is to approach the Lord. The others must not come near, and the people may not come with him. Then Moses and told the people the Lord's words and laws. They responded with one voice, Everything the Lord has said we will do. Moses then wrote down everything the Lord had said. He got up early the next morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain, and set up 12 pillars representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Then he sent young Israelite men, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed young bulls as fellowship offerings for the Lord. Moses took half the blood and put it in the bowls, and the other half he splashed against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it to the people. They responded, We will do everything the Lord said. We will obey. Then Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, This is the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words. Moses, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel went up and saw the God of Israel. Under his feet was something like a pavement made of lapis lazuli, as bright as the blue is in the sky. God did not raise his hand against these leaders of Israel. They saw God, and they ate and drank. The Lord said to Moses, Come up to me on the mountain and stay here, and I will give you tablets of stone with the law of the commandments I have written for their instructions. Then Moses set out to Joshua, his aide, and Moses went up to the mountain of God. He said to the elders, "Wait here for us until we come back to you. Aaron and Hur are with you, and anyone involved in dispute can go to them." When Moses came up to the mountain, and the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai. For 6 days the cloud covered the mountains, and on the 7th day the Lord called Moses from within the cloud to the Israelites. The glory of the Lord looked like a consuming fire on top of the mountain. Then Moses entered the cloud as he went on top of the mountain, and he stayed on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. Dear Lord, thank you for today, and thank you for the plans you have for us. Thank you for this amazing story that we don't need to worry about those laws, that we can be under Jesus' laws. Amen.